let's get going. Hi everyone. I am this guy here, David Johnson, and I run a company called Delivering Asia Communications. And we have a session today about recovery and, well, crisis and recovery. We're going to talk a little bit more about recovery than about crisis. We don't want to be just too weighed down by the crisis. So we have, and we want to keep positive. We have Vanessa Zhu, she's on the line from Shanghai. Over here in the corner there, we have our influencer expert, also from Shanghai, who's been living in Phuket for the last few months. And this is Vita's son over there. So let me get my clicker and let's go through this. So just very, very obviously, this is not an advertorial in any way whatsoever. I'm just going to quickly say who we are, and then you'll understand that. So we are a regional PR agency, and we specialise in hospitality around the region. We've been around for 15 years. We're headquartered in Bangkok. We have offices in Hong Kong, Shanghai and Singapore. So what we do in terms of PR, we do strategic communications, strategy, execution across all different channels, digital, traditional, social, influencer, and we do crisis communications. So, and it's actually something we're going to talk about a little bit in a moment. Crisis communications part is something that's usually just at the bottom of everyone's list. So we're going to go through that in a minute. Everyone can hear me okay? I don't need the mic. So I don't really need to tell everyone that we live in unprecedented times, but it's pretty obvious. We do. It's completely different from anything that's really happened before. You know, we had SARS, we had 9/11. They were pretty massive, dramatic events, and they had a huge impact on the travel industry. But this is something very different. WTTC President CEO Gloria Guevara said no one can doubt we're in uncharted territory. The travel and tourism industry is uniquely exposed. Well, we are, right? We all are. We're in this boat too. We specialise in hospitality. We can see clearly what's happening in the hospitality industry. ITB was obviously cancelled the first time in 58 years because you can't have large meetings. That's why we've got a small meeting today. Everyone is, you're a little bit close over there, by the way. I think the social distancing rule is 1 metre. No, excuse me, no, I jest. But that's, you know, this is the new reality that we live in. That's why we have I don't know how many people, and that's why we're conducting a webinar today. And there's more people who are logged into this than are actually in this room. I think we have 30 or 40 or something of that nature. So I just wanted to give you a bit of an idea about what's trending at the moment. There's doomsday trending. And what you have with that is because, so Europe is becoming the epicenter. Who would have guessed Europe was going to become the epicenter of COVID-19, which started in China, started in Wuhan. And I'm going to talk a lot about China in a moment. I've got some really interesting data, but that's what's happening. You've got in Italy, you've got people singing from the balconies, you've got pestilence and plague art trending. You know, there's also people are getting depressed, and the borders are closing, schools are closing, elderly are getting confined, airlines are grounded, no international flights from Qantas. The industry is on the brink of collapse after CEO Mr. Westbury said a couple of days ago. Okay, Michael Stipe has a slightly different read on it too. The end of the world as we know it. So people are depressed. People are, you know, having a really hard time. Their businesses are in trouble, particularly the travel business. However, there is some hope and positive action out there, which is interesting. There's one particularly interesting trend that I saw a couple of days ago, and if you look at hashtag caremongering, you'll find this is a trend that's emerging in Canada. So, because people are just getting so bored and so depressed by the negativity of scaremongering, the media are obviously hugely responsible for it because they're selling the house and doing quite well out of this. So, caremongering trend, you know, it's about care and about community spirit. So these are some positives that are coming out of this, which I think is good and I think is interesting. But you also have some, you know, some signs of positivity emerging in Marriott International. A couple of days ago in Travel Weekly, they said early signs of improvement in Greater China as workers return to their jobs and hotels. Well, that's what's happening in China. Right, Vita? On the street. Restaurants are open again. Hotels are filling up again. Bars are filling up. People are returning to work with a health certificate. You know, it is really changing, which is good. TAT have launched a Better Together campaign. The recovery for Asia, from what certainly we can see, looks as though it will start around July, Q3. And I'll tell you why we think that in a moment, but you know, confidentially, there's some major hospitality groups, and they are already having their recovery strategies geared towards that time frame for Asia returning to Thailand and obviously to Phuket. And by Asia, I really mean China, Hong Kong, Singapore primarily. Okay, a lot of hotel openings. So we are involved in hospitality, obviously around the region, and a lot of hotel openings. They have all been pushed. So they're all pushed to Q3. End of Q2, Q3. That's where we are now, because people are beginning to buy into the fact that this is a likely scenario. Okay. What's also happening is that the world's becoming a little bit more extreme. You know, there's a lot of panic and there's a lot of fear in the market. You know, you've got the blundering leaders of democracies are looking, you know, fairly blundering as they are, you know, going around trying to make, you know, command decisions in this scenario. Whereas the autocracies in Asia seem to be doing reasonably well out of it because they are able to make, you know, clear and decisions about things. China market is interesting, and as I say, I'm going to talk about China more in a moment, because the middle ground seems to have moved. It's becoming more extreme. So you have, from the luxury sector, it's becoming, I don't know what I'd call a supercharged luxury. And the value sector, the economy sector, is going to go even more economy and value focused. So that's what we're seeing. Obviously, welcome to virtual reality. Virtual reality. The digital space is so if you weren't into the digital space before, or you're just putting your toe into it, we need to be in it with both feet. It really has come very fast. You know, we're doing a webinar today. Normally we would have a room full of PHA members and associates and what have you. That would be great. But today we're doing a webinar, and there's actually more people watching it than they are actually in the room. So it's just an indication, the social distancing, being confined, being quarantined. Actually, Thailand's being relatively unscathed by all of this. Relatively, in terms of numbers, in terms of people who've actually been affected, the confinements, that's much more dramatic in Europe, and obviously in China, South Korea, when this came about. So I'm having a bit of a problem with my clicker. Could something click? That's the problem with the new technical era, isn't it? Where's IT when you need to? Here we go. Okay, maybe it was my picture that was doing that. There we go. So what on earth are we going to do? See if my clicker's working again. It might be. Thank you. It is. So I just thank you. And Guy will find out. So I just wanted to run you through a couple of kind of key actions. You're probably doing a lot of this already, and if you're not, you know, need to get it done. But I'm sure you're doing a lot of this already. But this has just got a little bit of a recap. However, when it comes to crisis comms, I'm not going to talk too much about crisis comms. Whoops. This is what you should have prepared if you haven't already. Some companies just put crisis comms right at the end. They don't prepare for it. There's often a reason for that. It's often a resource reason for that. And good reasons for that. Obviously, your Accors and your Marriotts, and they have these big systems in place, and they can roll them out, but the independents often don't. So when you have a look, you know, you need to. So we're here. We're at 8. So steps 1 to 8 should really have been done and thought through before any sort of eventuality, any sort of crisis. Anticipation, you need to do a vulnerability audit, you need to have a crisis response plan, you need to identify who your crisis communications team are. You need to train the right spokesperson, they need to have the right skills, they need to be in the right position. You need to get the buy-in from the people in the right position, the CEO, for example. There needs to be a whole notification set up, monitoring systems for sentiment, for news, so you know what's going on. So you have all of these different things to do. So you've got to identify your key stakeholders. Who are the people that you need to address? You need to address your guests. You need to address all the different stakeholders, the partners, and people who are going to influence the entirety of your business. Your holding statements, messaging, different scenario statements, which you can then adapt. There we are. That's where we are at 8. So assessing the crisis, its ramifications. So these are the sorts of steps that you need to look at when it comes to crisis comms. As I say, we're not going to go into that in too much detail today, but once you've adapted your messages and the action, which is where we are now, and I'm going to go through some of the things in the next few slides about where we are now, what we can be doing, what we should be doing now. I'm just going to talk about 8 really, but it's just an indication of, so for crisis comms, if you don't have your crisis communications in place, it's a good time to think about it. If you have, maybe in the downtime, we're not going to be as busy as we are. That's certainly for sure. We're going to be at home a lot more. But just thinking about it and planning through crisis scenarios, because that's pretty important. So the three kind of key things I'm just going to talk about. Keep calm and communicate with confidence. So there's 3. So there's calm, care, and there's another one. So don't get caught up in the hysteria. This will affect your team, partners, and travelers. You need calm leaderships. You need to, it will inspire confidence of your staff, confidence of your partners. You know what you're doing. Let the data do the talking. Have the numbers. Have the updated numbers. There's so many places to find really good quality data. So really use that. Don't just emotional speech making is not really working. And stand by your customers. Prepare a plan to win your travellers back and customers back for now and in the future. So that's what we need to be doing with a calm mind, a calm head. And it's difficult. It's a really difficult thing to do because businesses are in trouble. So you're putting out fires everywhere. People are being laid off or they're going home without pay. It's not an easy situation. But this is what, in terms of leadership, that you need to be looking at. So communications, so clarity is really, really, really important. So keep it clear and concise. So obviously communicate with guests and travel partners openly, proactively, regularly, and consistently. So have your plan ready before you start rolling out communications. There's some key things to do here. Combat the fears and tell people what you're doing on a property level. Do you have temperature screening for guests? If so, talk about it. This is what we have. For guests, suppliers and staff, ask guests to complete a travel and health declaration. And provide surgical masks and sanitizers. These are basic things that we now live with. But let's just have a communication that, if you haven't sent it out already to all of your partners, you should send it out. Really should. Door handles. How do you catch corona? It's with your hands and in your face. So you need to have an understanding and show people that you have an understanding of what needs to be done. Tough one here is flexibility too. Provide flexibility for guests to change their plans. This is totally and utterly unprecedented, uncharted territory. Free cancellations. It's going to hurt you, but it will give you the loyalty you would certainly hope for those guests. Travel plans change at an instant. This will ensure they will come back. But I think one thing that this has taught us is to keep it caring and empathetic. Be kind. When you have a look at it, this is a massive and major global tragedy, pandemic. It's about people losing their lives. It's a story of people's lives, and lives matter. So it's a chance for humanity to rethink and reset. So on one level, that's really something important to think about. And so there's things you can do. There's people at risk in your communities. In Camilla, there's areas of people we don't know. I know there's big, but this could come. This is certainly the case in many places where there's a much bigger issue. But let's find out how we can help. Be genuinely caring. And this is not a PR gimmick. The last thing you want to be doing is leveraging this to get PR mileage. It's just wrong. So do things. They're elderly. Have elderly in Phuket been quarantined yet? Over 70? I don't think so. Is that going to come? Possibly. Are elderly being advised to stay at home? I'm sure they are. So if they are in a community, how are they going to help? It's pretty sad and lonely being at home all the time. Do they have an extended family, or do they not? Can we do? Is there a way in which we can assist and help them in bringing them meals, going to the supermarket? Just small kindnesses. Generating stuff to do, social responsibility, but not things to shout about. So community spirit and cooperation comes back to this caremongering, and I think it's good and it's honest, and and it will help. It will help internally, your communications internally. Bring your teams together for a greater purpose. This is good stuff. But this is not for the media. Be conscious of the new realities. Obviously, mask, alcohol, social distancing. I think we're still okay there. So that's where we are with that. Because we're on a webinar, there's people can ask questions, and they'll type their questions. We're going to do questions at the end, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So just so you know, so the recovery. So that's just a bit about the crisis communications and some things you should consider. But in terms of the recovery, I'm going to have a look at three things. One is short-term, mid-term, and the other one is China. So recovery strategies. I don't know what you're all doing, but from a domestic point of view, there are opportunities. I know in Singapore, staycations, where staycations always seem to work really well. There's a lot of staycations happening. People are still travelling in Thailand. People are still travelling domestically. Far fewer than before. We all know that. What's going to happen? Is there a rumour? Is Phuket going to possibly get locked down? Goodness. Possibly. I would say probably unlikely. But so, in terms of domestic, tactical, obviously you don't want to leverage the issue, but it's an opportunity for contingency for the next few months, for the next, for Q2. F&B drivers, okay, the whole dining issue is you can't be all so close. The social etiquette. It's changing the social in terms of the distancing, but it's also an opportunity. So domestic should be the focus. Aspirational content is another one. Fuel the dreams for recovery. So by aspirational content, I really mean kind of long lead content. So this is something for you to look at when it comes to your PR and marketing teams. They should consider something like this. An aspirational concept, so fueling the dreams. So for example, a story about design. Some of the traditional media which is print and online, but really great A-list branded media. like a wallpaper, for example, for a design story. You know, they think they plan 4-6 months out. So let's have a look at what you want, where you want to be in terms of a long lead story. This is stuff that you can be doing, and it helps you plan for the recovery. Digitally, keep people informed. You know, reach people at home. Webinars, as we're doing today. You know, agent partners. Set up webinars with agent partners. Keep in touch. What's the situation on the ground? You know, this is you know, Zoom. We're on the Zoom platform today. You know, it's not expensive, very secure, and strong. So it's a new tool, and a key new tool. You know, social media. So these are ways in which you should. I don't know. I would advise certainly it'd be a good idea to reach people at home through some of these new tools as digital really started to take over and have an enormous influence. Obviously, you can prepare for the recovery through marketing and planning also. So we've got more time on our hands. Let's get our plans straight and let's plan for the future. So the age of recovery, and after this I'm going to talk about China, because certainly the data that we're seeing and what we are hearing on the ground in the market is this is going to be the first country for the recovery, the biggest single market into Thailand and into Phuket. So it's going to be really important to be aware of it. Short haul markets, Hong Kong and Singapore also. You know, the numbers in these markets, I mean, they've been able to, so outside of China, Hong Kong and Singapore, I've got some numbers for you in a moment, but they're minuscule compared to what's happening in Europe and happened, you know, initially in China. Absolutely minuscule. And people are returning to work, people are getting their lives back together. That's what's the reality on the ground. That's what's happening in China, that's what's happening in Hong Kong, that's what's happening in Singapore. People are returning to work. The banks are opening, HSBC buildings open again in Hong Kong, Singapore, schools are open. You know, it's business as usual, but a different reality about how we live and work. And then the next stage will be the recovery. And there's new markets too. Has anyone looked at Vietnam as a potential inbound market into Phuket? Is that something you should be looking at? I say yes. You already have a look at some of the numbers. You obviously have to look at the lift. I mean, you've got. I don't know. I'd have to check, but you know, Vietjet is flying from Ho Chi Minh to Phuket direct. It's a hop. It's a short hop. We know what Phuket can offer compared to Vietnam is, you know, it's a dream destination. Is this a market that will come back quickly? You look at the figures of COVID in Vietnam. You know, they're minuscule. This will come back. This will come back, in my opinion, much quicker than the European markets. And then on the digital side, I think what's also going to be another important trend, something to look at, is going to be the age of nano influencers. And nano influencers are small, niche, organic influencers. These are not you've got the mega KOLs, and that's how the market is getting more extreme. But this is where I think where the real action and positivity and return is going to be for the nano influencers. And nano influencers, you know, I don't like to really judge people on influencers on how many likes or how many followers that they have, but more on levels of engagement and quality of content. And the nano influencers are passionate, they're niche, they're small. 5,000 followers. Certainly under 10,000, but really, really quality. So design, someone really super passionate about design. And these influencers have an organic following. You're not shelling out a couple of $1,000s for them to come and stay, you know, because they're really passionate. You can sell them a story about design, just as an example. So that's something to look at. And then when you look at the mega KOLs, that's how the market has become much more extreme. Okay. Hi.
Hey, Julia. What's KOL, sorry?
Oh, no, of course, excuse me. Key opinion leader.
Sorry.
So, key opinion leader
I
is
know what it is, but please.
okay, just a bit of a case study on China, because certainly we believe China's going to be the first regional market to aggressively come back for Thailand. That's what we believe. And we believe there's a concept called retaliatory consumption that's going to be realized over the next few months. So, numbers are on the rise globally, but not in China. Sorry, these numbers here, they're a little bit well, they're not that old. They're 2 or 3 days old, but I mean the situation's it's from 17th, no, yeah, 19th. So a couple of days old, but obviously numbers are changing very quickly. But this is basically what you have, and what you have in China is that so currently, and this is today's data, just the numbers at the top here. So you've got 6,764 people who currently have the coronavirus. So actively have the coronavirus. 6,287 of them are in Hubei province, confined within the province. So there's only 477 outside of Hubei. Total numbers in Thailand, 277. 278. So which is, it's just 200 less. I mean, it's a minuscule figure, and there were 0 cases today. They have the situation under control. So Vanessa Ju, who has just come here on WeChat, who's our director based in Shanghai, she came to Thailand with her family because shut all the schools. She came here and she homeschooled her boys in Bangkok, and I stayed here for a month. She returned yesterday because she sees this trend, and we have got to get ready for it, because this is what's happening. This is what's happening. This is the new movement. So the Chinese market is flatlining. That's really what's happening with it. So numbers are decreasing every day. So you have this, and some great data here. So please go through it. But this just shows that the numbers are falling dramatically, and they're falling also, and their numbers are also very small, not only in mainland China, but in Greater China, if you like. So 17 cases only in Macau. Okay, of course, Macau is not much of an inbound market for Phuket, but it's just an indication. Hong Kong's 106. 106. It's nothing, is it? Taiwan, 81. Taiwan's not a massive market either, but it's something to think about. So the situation, the way it's developed and just run riot actually in Europe, you see how it's been controlled. And Asia is extraordinary actually. How people have really adopted a new living practice, how they have stayed at home. How they have just adopted a new way of life, a new normal. So people are back at work. People are back in the offices. There is one caveat to that, and I'd expect someone to ask it, which is now they've locked down their own countries. What they are most worried about is a potential second wave, and that second wave is inbound. So there's new screening procedures, expect to see mandatory corona testing at airports, this kind of thing. So there's going to be a whole new range of checks and balances in place. Stop that. So China, the way China played out over this period of time. So it really started kicking off in late January. So this period, so there's no dining out. So this is January. So where we said that this, it's almost 2 months ago. No dining out, no gatherings, no physical shopping, no cleaners, no nannies. Very important in a place like Shanghai, Beijing. No leisure, no space. So that's what happened there. And then this is people are totally confined. So a month they're confined. So this is not just Wuhan. This is countrywide. This is Beijing and Shanghai too. There's no one's going anywhere doing anything. Then here, from the 23rd of February, the last week in February, people started to come back to work. Healthy people were coming back to work, allowed to work nationwide again with medical certificates. So now, here we are coming to the third week of March. Things are becoming relatively normal. Relatively normal. People have been stuck in their rooms, their houses, their mansions, their apartments, for 2 months, dreaming of holidays, dreaming of getting out, going crazy with the kids climbing all over them, schools being closed. So this is the concept that we believe of retaliatory consumption that will come to pass. It's got a figure here about Thailand. So just the latest numbers up there. So it's 277 cases. So it has jumped. So we've got about 30 a day at the moment, and I understand there's cases in Phuket. So that needs to be clearly thought about. But so why Thailand for the Chinese market? Okay, you've got access. Flights are available from all major destinations apart from Hubei, which is still locked down, which is still really the epicenter of the issue in China. People want a holiday after so long at home. They want to avoid long-haul travel. Obviously, Europe's not really an option. So they're going to avoid risky destinations, and they're going to avoid cold weather. It's not brilliantly scientifically proven about the heat. Got no data on that at all. But there seems to be an understanding that hot countries, it spreads it's far less virulent as a virus. There's advanced medical services in Thailand, as of course, as we know. It's Chinese friendly. It's been quite a backlash against the Chinese market. Quite a racist backlash, really. Certainly in Europe, it's called, what did Donald Trump call it? He called it the China virus. My goodness. And there's been some really good and thoughtful work in Thailand towards the Chinese travelling public, which says, you're welcome. I think it's really important. And I think it's certainly something when you're talking to your partners, the agents, the partners that you have in China or in Phuket about China, it's a great message to send. Okay, only healthy people are allowed to travel. It's Thailand's still, it's good value. Distance, it's only 4 or 5 hours, 5 hours direct flight really away. Offers diversity. So it offers luxurious travel, it offers family, it offers romance, it offers solo, it offers mountains, beach. Not many mountains in Phuket, grant you that. But Thailand is the #1 destination for outbound, for Chinese travellers travelling out of China. Don't like to draw too many comparisons with SARS, and you probably can't read this because it's absolutely minute. But you can have a little look at it later. But what it's basically saying is that there was retaliatory consumption that came after this, after SARS, and we expect it to broadly follow a similar pattern. What some people have said, they said, no one will have any holidays. The Chinese government will want to drive their own domestic economy and promote domestic travel, not to go outside. However, the market that I think is really, really attractive is upscale, FIT, independent travelling, market travellers from the major urban centres, like Shanghai, like Beijing, where they will travel. They are business owners, they're entrepreneurs, they don't have 3 or 4 days. That's a different market. They're not bound so much by that. They're more driven by an absolute need to get out of China and experience the warmth and the beach and the comfort of luxury. But the whole luxury space, I think, is going to change. I think it's going to be much more extreme. I think we will see a demand for a different type of luxury. So the pent-up demand is going to mean it's going to be business class travel, even private jet travel. Private jet travel out of Shanghai, for example, as Vita would tell you, is not that expensive. You have 8 seats and people are dividing it up. It's not crazy. It's not unacceptable. People will be looking for accommodation in a new way, a new type of accommodation, cognizant of the new social etiquette, so social distancing. People are going to want the space. They're going to want the luxury sector, are going to want luxurious villas. So it's going to be really focused there. They're going to want, much more private experiences, individual experiences. The way you can really explore the destination, obviously, and the property too. Then there's going to be another market which is going to be just deals driven. I think Phuket is fairly familiar with this market, certainly in certain areas when there's a large mass market portion. So that's going to come back too. And I think it's going to be a more value deal driven market than ever before. But I think the luxury market will change and become a more luxurious market. So there's a few thoughts here on these 3 markets. We know a lot of this data already, so I'm not going to spend too long on this, to be honest with you. Schools are closed, kids are home, bars are closed to a degree. I've only just came down last night, I don't really know. But are all the bars, restaurants closed? Are they? They're not. See, it hasn't so. But Bangkok, it's a bit different. So is that coming to Phuket? You would have to say it's a high possibility of that. So everyone knows that Songkran's been postponed, so Songkran is just a normal period now, so we're not going to have that. However, school holidays, we've got the longest school holidays we're going to have for a long time. So domestic, so that's something you look at. But the country is preparing. It is preparing, responsibly preparing, with beds and converting hotels. And there's a movement for there to be a lockdown. Hong Kong, I've talked to some about this already. 180,000 civil servants are back at work. It's a big number. They're all back as of March 2. So there we go, they're back at work. Things are changing. March 11th saw reopening of numerous leisure facilities, Disneyland. There's increasing. We are obviously a regional company, as I said, and so our guys in Hong Kong, they're pitching stories for our clients in around Southeast Asia, and stories about Thailand are getting more and more acceptance. A lot more of the long lead stories, not necessarily the short term at the moment. People are a little bit unsure of the future, but there's an acceptance of the stories. So it's saying something. It's saying that there is a demand, an interest in reading about travelling to Thailand again, whereas before that wasn't the case. As I said, banks return to work, HSBC being one. Singapore. Singapore's an island, they've done pretty well through all of this. Schools aren't closed, supermarkets normal, no panic buying, tourist attractions, hotels, businesses, they're all open. Hotels are not doing very well. They're running below 50% across the board. I think that's going to be a pretty decent number for some of them. But you've already got in the market, so Chan Brothers, for example, one of the biggest travel agents based in Singapore, as you all know, are putting deals together for Thailand Q3. So why are they doing that? Because they also think it's just an indication, it might change of course, it's an indication that there is an understanding in the industry, this is when the Asian market are going to start coming back. And obviously they're looking for bookings, the booking period will be in the next, I don't know exactly for some of these, but it's going to be in the next, say it's going to be by the end of April, you book a trip to Thailand, by the end of April you get a certain rate for trips that are going to be in July. So that's it. So that's pretty much what I've got for you. There's a couple of slides at the end about delivering Asia, about our firm. So I'm not going to go into those. This is who we are. This is the team. It's a regional team. These are some of our clients. This is where we have offices, and this is where we have those are partner offices, where our physical offices are. Thank you very much. Anyone got any questions?
Yeah, David, Urs
Yes.
here from Zerenti. Are you really believing that Thailand is preparing seriously for this? I mean, 400 beds for a population of 11 million in Bangkok. That doesn't sound very responsible for me, you know. Announcements like today that they guarantee the Chatuchak market is virus-free by the marketing manager of Chatuchak, and all the other communication disasters we've had coming out of the local authorities. So how can you say that they are preparing responsibly here in Thailand? I can't believe that.
Well, I think they've got a communication issue for sure. I think they've got a communication
They've
issue.
also got an enforcement issues with the things that they would like to enforce at the moment, because we all know that it's not happening.
Yeah.
So I think that Thailand is driving right into a major disaster here. And before it gets better, it's going to get a lot worse. So when the Chinese are going to be ready to travel, we're not going to be ready to welcome them, because we're going to be in the middle of the crisis.
That's if it. That's. I'm not going to argue against that, because I've seen a lot of ridiculous communications, and there are enforcement issues. Of course, we know that, and there's been resignations and top positions because you can't get stuff done. Different departments aren't talking to each other at airports. I mean, right. And are the numbers correct? The fact that we've got 277 cases, is that a correct number?
Most
So, I mean,
likely it's not. We all know that.
No,
I
that's
mean,
right. I mean, you're absolutely right. We don't know that. However, what we do have, we have very quickly a culture that I see certainly in Bangkok of everyone's going to work at home. So there's a lot of self-quarantining. There's not a resistance to that. The numbers of everyone wears a mask, and there's the sanitizers everywhere. So I mean, there is a consciousness of it, which I think will help the spread. It will help stem the spread. I do think that. Of course, has it been ideally managed? Absolutely not. Do you have a question for me?
It's more a statement.
Okay.
I was wondering where you get your positivity from, to be honest. I'd love to hear it.
Yeah.
I think to some degree we also need it. Because we are the ones leading by example. We need to spread that to the team. Everything will be better. Just hang out there.
Mm.
But if you're saying that there is a pent-up demand that will hit us in Q3, I'm not quite sure where you're getting that data from.
Mm.
Because when I look around, and we are the lucky ones that still have a job up until now, tomorrow we don't know.
Yeah.
But there are so many people that lost their jobs. So many people were laid off or lost their existence because their business is still not existing anymore. If I look at China, I have a prediction that they won't travel for the foreseeable time because their economy is so far behind, and the marching order will be out there to compensate for that. And there will be nobody, knowing the Chinese system a little bit, there will be nobody willingly stepping out of line and saying, I'm going for a week on vacation because I deserve it now after being locked away for such a long time. Everybody will be happy, all the way from the youngsters, all the way to the elderly, because they will look at social services as well, to care for the ones that have been locked in for so long time. So I don't know where you get your confidence that will hit us like a tsunami, a positive tsunami.
Yeah.
I love to hear it,
Yeah.
I love to believe it, but I don't see the signs on the wall for that.
Yeah, I suppose. So the confidence and the data comes from our team in Shanghai. That's what they're seeing in the population. That's what they're seeing amongst a certain segment that will travel. They will travel. So they won't necessarily be bound by the marching orders of the government, whereas the lower segment, they will be. Something much more easy to control. There's flights in and out of Shanghai to Bangkok already, and they are, people are starting to travel. I don't want to be overly positive. I'm not overly positive. I see this as a strong potential scenario for that particular segment of the Chinese market, not the mass market for sure. Because they're still bound, they haven't got any holiday time. They will listen to the government when they say travel domestically. The others won't care. Sorry, were you going to pass something? Yeah, please.
This is Studio Sticks with Minor. I'm with. Sorry, I forgot your name. Sorry.
Yeah.
Gerd.
Yeah.
So I'm with Gerd, and I
Thank
would
you.
like to add.
I'm a fan.
Positivity is great, and I've seen in my case, and I also like to end with a statement. But I've seen how I've changed my position, though I have a very precise idea on why this thing is around. But I changed my mindset over the last 3 weeks in a very rapid way. There's one thing that I read yesterday. The Secretary of World Health Organization, which is nowadays we really need to just try to get information from those kind of sources, said that there will be a moment where you're going to have a peak as it was in China, and after the peak the curve will be a line, and then the line will come down. So don't fall in temptation when the line goes down to run out, especially in the country where I'm from, famous for like being football lovers and say, yeah, we're the champions, campioni del mondo will be in Italian, right? Running out and start embracing everyone, because that's going to be the greatest mistake.
Yeah.
The WHO says 45 days after the declaration of the end of a pandemic is the right amount of time you have to require to do so. So I would like to end with this statement. So let's be positive. I'm scared, of course, because I know that right now we're going to see his company CEO made a very strong statement this morning, and every company are making strong statements. So let's try at least to know that at the end of the tunnel there is a light, but
Right.
there's still some miles to drive before getting into that. So I'm scared. I try to keep positivity. It's not easy. Sometimes I have really psychological outbreaks because it's not easy to deal with that, and especially when you're far away and you see your people that are suffering. So I would like to end with a statement and say, look positive. Let's be scared, because it's just to be scared right now, just to be prudent, but at the same time keep an eye on the real official news, which is the most important thing right now. And I see your point, Chinese, and I agree that Chinese will start traveling again, but isn't that a risk to get back to the situation where you have people start traveling and getting human connections?
Yeah, I think there'll be less, and there'll be higher end, and there'll be more educated, and there'll be more mindful. But it's not happening next week.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
That's for sure.
I would say, that's where that.
Thank you.
July. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much for sharing. Anybody else? Is anyone asking questions over
Speechless.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if there's no other questions,
Yeah, just something else, maybe not really related. I know this is a crisis communication type of workshop and everything. I wanted to kind of know from the people in the room who is considering to close the hotel at the moment or is already closed. Because that's the big elephant in the room for everybody. And if you're closing, what's your plan for the staff salaries? Whether that is been discussed yet, or anybody has anything from the Labour Office, whether we can evoke this famous force majeure clause soon, which leaves us off the hook with the 75% staff salaries and everything. Does anybody have a little bit of an update on that? Because I'm at Serenity in Rawai and we're likely closing in April, no choice. I'm curious to know from the people in the room where they are with the closing scenario and everything. If they want to share, if you don't want to share, then okay, I can't force you.